Judge Payne here. There's a war on your anecdotal experience. There's a war against what you view as your personal experience being credible evidence to use to inform your opinions on things. You've heard it in academics, in political commentary. I think I heard it on Kevin Samuels the other days, trying to diminish somebody's experience, saying, well, that's not what the data shows. Just a couple responses to that. There are pros and cons to both looking at your anecdotal experience and looking at data. But I'm concerned with the diminishing of the anecdotal experience. Number one, it's a first-person event and I trust myself. If you trust your own perception, that's accurate information in comparison to some data that you don't know where it came from all the time. We've all seen the bias that can occur with data or how it's presented. With anecdotal experiences, you know that the sensory input that you experienced was real, unless there's a mental incapacity or something like that. In most circumstances, you know what you experienced is a first-hand account of something that's real. You know that the conditions were there for that experience to happen. So you can draw certain conclusions, even though it's only one event. That one event still means that the world's conditions were there, unless it's a total coincidence that not only had it occur to you, it could occur to anyone else in a similar situation. It could. So the capacity is there. We use anecdotes every day in court. I am an attorney, and you bring in data sometimes, you bring in first-person eyewitness experience sometimes. It's completely normal to base findings of fact on a person's first-hand experience and their narrative that they're explaining in court as evidence that a fact finder can use to make a decision on something. Data is helpful too, but there's all sorts of different issues that can come into data in terms of sample size, what the question is being posed for getting the data, how you present the data, and all of it. And very rarely is it my first-hand experience that I procured the data. I can't think of a time that I've done that in more of like a scientific method. One other point about anecdotes. If I have an experience over the years with hundreds of people, is it really that anecdotal? My point is, there's almost a data-driven component to what you might call your personal experience. If I experience the same kind of interactions, like women exhibit this type of behavior, or children usually exhibit this type of behavior at this time or something, or at this level of development, I don't necessarily need data, like an outside source of data to understand, okay, I've witnessed this dozens and dozens of times. For example, if girls text, I'll let you know. Oh, let's make plans, let's do this time. They say, oh, okay, yeah, I'll let you know. I think I've gotten let known on a follow-up maybe 0 times out of like hundreds and hundreds of iterations of that. When I get that, and so as a result, when I get that, I'll let you know. I know I need to come up with a different way to address that in order to get to move that interaction forward. It's just an example that what you might call anecdotal. Okay, but if it's happening dozens and dozens of times, is it really? Does it bleed over into data, or it's just really strong, verified conclusions based on singular anecdotal experiences mounting over time? So next time you have some academic, expert, whatever, say, oh, well, that's just your anecdotal experience. Okay, number one, it happened, so the conditions were there for it to happen, so we can draw some conclusions on that, unless you totally doubt my credibility that it happened. So first ask that, do you doubt that this happened to me, that I experienced this? Well, no, but I could, well, okay, then the conditions were there for it to happen, so at least it sometimes happens. And then number two, it's happened to me repeatedly. It's very rare for the alternative thing to happen. and you can explain that you've seen this occur over time. And so it's like, is it really my only anecdotal experience, or is there something more broadly applicable about this that almost veers into data? If you have hundreds of experiences with people, okay, that's a first person taken perspective on a large sample size over time. So there are very positive attributes to data. Obviously, you can get a very wide sample size in a large geographic area that can contrast very disparate demographics, for example. But I think we all get that. We all get that there's advantages to data and taking extraordinary amounts of input. But what I'm concerned with is the war on the anecdotal. And it's just a thought. I haven't seen people really mentioning that, so defend yourself.